Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Homeschool Well podcast. Jenny and I are here today with you,
Hello.
and it is the second week of June in 2026. In June, we are talking about reflecting on the past year of homeschooling because June is a good break time for many families. Even if you're schooling through the summer, we encourage you to listen because not only reflecting on your homeschool year gives you great insight and helps you make power moves, but this episode today is about reframing. Last week's episode was about reflecting. And if you haven't listened to that, go back afterwards, and we encourage you to do so because once you reflect and you realize all the things that were actually good and were challenging, then you can do this next step of reframing. And that's today's topic. So reframing the hard parts of your homeschool. We're really dialing into helping you focus on what to do with that information about the challenging things, the real hard parts of homeschooling. What do you do once you know those specifics and what they are? The first thing is that you are accepting of the fact that every family has hard seasons. Every homeschool struggles with things like motivation, tears over certain content area, burnout, behavior issues. We don't care what family it is. If they're walking around like the little ducks in the row, I remember we had one family like that in our community. Oh, I was like, man, that mom is perfect. Her kids are just like always, doing the right thing. But when I talked to her, she said, no, this is real. Sometimes it gets really rough and everybody has those seasons. So look at those hard parts. What if those hard parts are not pointing to your failures, but they're opportunities for you to grow, and they're maybe milestone markers in your children's development? What if you were able to change your perspective and your mindset based on the truth that you found in your reflections of the hard things, and also based on who we are in the Lord and what God calls us to do when we're in the middle of all of this hardship?
Yeah, and who we are and what he says about us.
Mm-hmm.
We say terrible things about ourselves. He's not saying that.
Ooh,
So,
and to be honest,
mhm.
sometimes we say terrible things about our kids too, don't we?
Yes.
Yikes.
Yes, we do. Yes. So I think it's reframing your thinking, taking all that from your reflection that we talked about last week. What are all the things you thought about this past year? And then let's put them all and categorize them how they need to actually be. I think we have heard from so many moms, one yesterday, actually. In fact, I was telling Kim when we started this entire podcast, everything we're talking about today was our conversation with this mother yesterday. It's kind of cool, really.
We wrote these points up a long time ago.
A long time ago, right? We didn't write them. Yeah, this was written a while ago.
This was not
for this.
Yeah, yes. The outline didn't come from our conversation yesterday. We've had this outline written down for months. Correct. And when we came to it today, it just happened to match what we were talking to one of the moms in our community about yesterday. And that's just more evidence that it's so common.
Yes. Yes. So this mom, she's saying, I'm doing this wrong. This is happening. All these things are happening. And as moms, we interpret these challenges that we're having with our kids as signs that we are bad at momming, or we are bad at homeschooling, or we are doing something wrong and it's making our kids do whatever,
Yeah.
And
she kept asking, what am I doing wrong? What am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you feel like a failure and you feel like I'm totally failing at this. All these challenges are happening. I must be failing. I must be doing this wrong. It's so personal. And we're too embarrassed to tell anyone. And in fact, I commend people when they ask for help, because sometimes it takes someone from the outside to do that. There's always going to be difficult seasons. And every time a new season or change happens, it can create fear and insecurity in ourselves or with our kids. And we just often think that if something bad happens, that we have ruined our children. And I hear homeschool moms say that all the time. I'm probably ruining my child, or I shouldn't homeschool. I would ruin my child. And that is totally not true. It is not true. That's a lie. And that's a lie from the enemy. And that's what we told this mom yesterday.
Mhm.
This is where Satan gets in your head and lies to you. And that is not at all, it's not the truth.
Remember that Instagram reel that I shared with you? And it was a few months ago, but it was something about, thank God we're not perfect parents, because that would be a horrible thing for our kids to have to live up to when they
Oh,
become
yeah.
parents,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Do. Yes.
Ooh, so if you're not honest about your failures and your kids do think you're perfect, then when they become parents, they're going to feel like real
They're really
failures.
failing.
Yeah, because there's no reality check. Yes.
We're all imperfect. We
That's
need to
great.
remember that and call it out and call it as it is. We are not Jesus. We are imperfect. He's the only perfect person. So we're going to fail at things.
Yeah.
So we just want to take this time to encourage you that hard does not equal wrong. Just because something's hard or you're having some kind of struggle in your home, it does not mean that something was wrong or something bad happened. Sometimes things just happen. And, we were talking to this mom yesterday. Her child is about to go through puberty, and kids are like crazy at that age. It's like they're infants again. They're sleeping all the time or having growth spurts. Weird things are happening. Things can get hard and you don't even know why sometimes. It doesn't mean that anyone did anything wrong. It just means sometimes things are a challenge. Struggles just happened where growth is needed. Sometimes you just have to realize we need to grow in this area. This is where this child needs to grow in their character. I need to grow in my character in this area. And sometimes a struggle can pop up. God always works through the imperfect seasons because there is no perfect season. So this is where we just have to trust him. And if you listened a couple weeks ago to Kim's quick podcast that she made after all of her kids' graduations were all happening at the same time, that was just a revelation that she had. In fact, when I was listening to it, she made it without me. She made it by herself. And when I listened to it, I was just like tearing up. I was like, oh my goodness, this is so heartfelt and amazing. Like I
was so glad.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a really crazy May, and that was it. Is like his plans really are so good, even though at the same time they can be like, I'm scared of him sometimes, and the things that he allows to happen. It doesn't feel good, but he just does. I can trust him, and so I think we're speaking to moms who have younger kids, and you're in the thick of it, right? And we just want you to know that you can trust him. Every season is going to feel imperfect in some way.
Yes, something's going to be happening, whether it's growth in your kid, whether they're going through puberty or you got hit by a hurricane or, anything. It could be whatever. So there's always something that's going on. And some of the best lessons are learned during this time for your kids, for your family, for yourself. I think I learned just as much as my kids when we homeschooled. God was refining me. He was refining my character, while I was trying to refine their character and trying to pray that he could refine their character. So there's just so much going through all of these times.
And it's encouraging to know when you do go through challenges, don't ignore them. You go through them in whatever messy manner that you can. You're teaching your child resilience and tenacity.
Grit.
Grit. There doesn't need to be this perfect wrapped up in a bow education for your kid to thrive. And God's plan for your family is going to be so incomprehensible for all of us, I think, that you're not behind. You can't call yourself or label your teaching style or anything as being behind, because you're not. God's plan is just unique for your family. And it includes so much more than academics. It's heart training for our kids, but also for us.
Yes. And we wanted to share this encouraging verse with you this week. And it's about how to reframe your thoughts. And it's 2 Corinthians 10:5. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God. And we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. And this is where you really have to be cognizant of the fact that Satan will attack your mind, go at you.
And be intentional. It says, make it obedient to Christ. Make your thought obedient to Christ, which is life-giving. So if you
Yes.
got a bunch of death words rolling around in your head
Mhm.
and negativity, I'm speaking to myself so much. When I was a youngster, that was such a big deal in my life. Negative thoughts took over all the time. And so this verse is one of those foundational life verses for me, and it's an action.
Mhm.
First of all, be cognizant that there are thoughts going on that are not of Christ, and then take action and make them life-giving, make them obedient to how Christ wants you to think.
Oof. In my mind, I have a visual of this verse, and it's a huge net that's being thrown like a cast net, because my kids
Yeah.
fit. And so
Yeah.
like a cast net that's being thrown over all these awful thoughts. And you just take them and then make them bow down at the cross. Like I
Wow.
take them and I drag them over to the cross and make
Love
them
that.
like bow down to Jesus. You know what I mean?
That's
I don't know. That
awesome.
is the visual I always have in my mind for that verse.
That is great.
It's weird.
And you know what though? No, it's not. It's the action of throwing the net and capturing them. But then it's also this is an action, but it sounds very passive. The surrender at the cross, you know.
Yeah.
Surrendering is a very active thing for me. I don't know if it comes easy to everyone else.
Oh,
Surrendering to the ability to make my thoughts life-giving, that is an action, but it doesn't have to be as hard, you know what I mean? Like the surrender part at the feet, just that visual that you're saying, and that's amazing. You've never shared that with me before. I want to draw that.
I don't think I've shared it with anyone. But
That's such a relief, that it doesn't have to be this hard thing that we're working towards all the time.
Mhm.
Be just put it over there at the foot of the cross, gather it up and put it over there. Yeah. Phew. I love that.
I think in pictures.
Yeah, it's powerful. And I need that. I'm such a visual person. She's always creating visuals for me. Okay, the tips that we're going to give you that are very practical ways to help you reframe. The first one is replace this thought of I am failing with this just needs adjusting. I am going
Mhm.
to adjust this thing. I'm not failing. We just tweak,
Mm-mm.
right? We
Yeah,
change
stop
it.
saying we're failing.
No failing.
Mm-mm.
Look for patterns instead of panicking. When you're taking this bad habit or whatever the hard thing is, look for the pattern of when it's happening. Maybe it has to do with, your kid being hungry or tired and the time of day that you're doing the thing. Find the pattern of it, be rational about it, and look for patterns of why it might be occurring, why it might be a hard thing.
Yeah, for instance, I'm thinking about one of my kids. This is just a dumb one, but anytime we had hard work, that kid would go to the bathroom. It's not a bladder issue or a bowel issue. That is a character issue. That's an avoidance issue.
Yeah.
That's just a dumb.
Well, no, that makes sense. And you're not going to panic outside the bathroom door. Oh my gosh, you have to get out here and do the blah, 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 blah. Right?
Right.
That doesn't create anything but more problems. Like you notice the pattern and you make him accountable to that. And it doesn't go away just because you went to the bathroom.
No, and it happened in other ways too.
Right. It's very
Just
passive
it
aggressive.
was just the pattern. Yeah, it was just the pattern he had of
Yeah. Avoiding.
when things get hard, just avoidance. Yeah, and not
Mhm.
dealing with the hard things.
Yeah. And to point those patterns out to your kids that's
Mhm.
a powerful thing for them to learn to know about themselves. All right. This one goes for moms, dads too, and kids. Separate behavior issues from academic issues. You might think, oh, their math skills are really weak, but maybe mom, and I'm kind of pointing to myself here, you have a bad attitude about teaching math. Or maybe child, right, is like you were saying, avoiding or being obstinate or trying to manipulate. Maybe it's not, they might have a learning disability. Maybe it is something more behavioral. And that's where connection and conversation and heart, sharing your heart with each other. And we do so encourage you to do this while your kids are young and create this habit of being able to have open communication, because as they get older and they're striving for independence, it can be hard to just all of a sudden start this whole like tell me how you really feel, conversation. But when they're
Mhm.
little, it's a little bit easier, right?
Mhm.
And reduce
Mhm.
unnecessary pressure. Okay, we know we all have time frames, and there's certain dates that are important to do things by, more so than others, but be honest with yourself, and just don't pressure yourself by pressuring them unless it's absolutely necessary. Like, is this thing really that important in the grand scheme of your life?
Mhm.
Be honest, ask other people's opinion, and especially your husband, who is often the fly on the wall sometimes. But we put all this pressure on ourselves, and we put that on our kids, and sometimes it's for no good reason at all. It's just ridiculous. It becomes this irrational thing that you get obsessed with. And
Mhm.
oh, doesn't the devil love that? Right?
True.
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah. Keep us running around in circles for nothing at all.
Mhm. So some practical changes you can make this time of year while you're thinking about how you're going to reframe your thinking and possibly plan a little for next year. Just start thinking about planning for flexibility in your schedule and subject areas. Like Kim just said, everything does not have to be die hard, life or death all the time.
You don't need to go at everything like you're killing
That's
snakes, our favorite.
exactly right. That's exactly right. That's what I always say. Just plan to be flexible and figure out a way that you can do that in your schedule. Maybe you keep Fridays open and, if
Mm.
you have a couple leftover things at the end of the week that didn't get done, you can kind of sprinkle them in there a little or just whatever works for your family. The second change you can make is to add more communication and connection and find out where your kid is. Again, just like Kim said, be able to have a conversation with your kid, talk to them about what's really happening and how you're going to reframe some of these situations and stop thinking of them as failures, but areas for growth. And the third thing is to focus on rhythms over rigid timeframes.
Yeah, you can ask your kids' feelings, their ideas, their thoughts about things, just to get to know their perspective. Don't use it to create conflict,
Mhm.
or start some kind of a battle with their feelings about, related to when they do their work or why they should do it your way. Just listen to them. Just sit and let them tell you their feelings and ideas, similar to how we take care of plants, right? They need good soil. You want to water, you want to nurture that ability to be able to communicate and make connection. That's a real practical change that is not related to academics seemingly, but in the end it is.
Mhm.
you know it's like the bridge that will help you make your academics more successful.
That's a good point. You don't have to set yourself up for failure when you can't get such and such, all these things done in a day. Be flexible, focus on rhythms. And a lot of homeschool moms do talk about that. The longer you homeschool, the more you realize that it's
Yeah.
more of a flow and not
Yes.
hardcore. This is what has to be done, like a traditional.
By this time. Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
And honestly, like, my kid needs to learn to read by this
Yeah.
age and this month in that year.
Right.
That is not
It
as
goes for
important
everything.
as
Hmm.
rhythm and flow in a homeschool world, because you get to make your own grade level and age level expectations for your homeschool. And that's why you're doing this.
Yeah.
So create your own unique rhythms and flow. So that wraps it up for this week's episode. And we hope it encourages you to stop labeling these hard seasons as failures and view them as opportunities to grow and pivot. If you need help with this, we are here. That's why we have our online community of support. We invite you to join us there. We have a 24/7 forum. We meet once a week, and you can message us anytime. To find out more about our community, go to thehomeschoolwell.com, and right there on the top of the homepage, click join now for all the details. Thank you so much for joining us today, and tune in next week for another new episode of the Homeschool Well podcast. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye.